Did you know that nearly 40% of recent college graduates feel their universities didn't adequately prepare them for emotional challenges of transitioning into workforce? Additionally, over half have sought help for mental health concerns like anxiety or depression within the past year. And these numbers are from organizations like BetterHelp and Insider Ed. These figures underscore the significant mental and emotional hurdles many young adults encounter as they move from academic life into their professional careers. In this episode of Growth Chakra, we delve into this critical topic with Siobhan McLaughlin, a master's student in counseling psychology at Yorkville University. Siobhan brings valuable insights into the mental health struggles associated with life transitions and offers practical advice for navigating this pivotal phase. Whether you're a recent graduate, a student on the cusp of entering the workforce, or someone who's interested in mental health, this conversation is for you. As we mark the Mental Health Month, that is the month of May, let's explore the challenges and strategies for maintaining mental well being during life's significant transitions with Siobhan and Limysh. Let's get started.
So, hi Siobhan, how are you doing?
Hi, Limysh. I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Super excited for this because this is something very close to my heart, like mental health, and it should be close to everyone's heart. And you know, uh, exactly an year back, I was in a similar situation. I did my master's. There was like a recession, and I was going into the job market. I was super scared. So, like, let's dive right into it. Like, I wanted to ask you, like, why is graduating such a mentally overwhelming experience for many students, even when it's like a very exciting thing or an event in someone's life, right?
Absolutely. It's such a monumental occasion for so many people, right? You've gone to school for X number of years and now it's coming to an end and it's an opportunity to celebrate how far you've come in your education journey, right? Um, what can be intimidating is the next step, right? Whether or not you have a job lined up, whether or not you're continuing your education, whether or not you don't know what you're doing and you're just taking a year off or taking a few years off. Like, so many people then go on what I like to call their own roadmap, because for so long you've been in school for majority of your life, and some people take a gap year after high school like myself, but even then you go back. Like, I went back into education for 4 years, and you get back into that mindset of like, this is the next step. But then once you graduate, it's a bit open ended than you anticipate, and being like, okay, well, what is the next step? What's the right thing to do for me? And then, but that's also a natural part of adulting, is you trying to figure out what you want to do.
Right. Actually, I can relate to that. For example, like, I did my high school and then I did my bachelor's and then I did my master's. Like, it was like a fixed way I have, like, oh, I'll do my bachelor's, I do my job. If I want to specialize in it, I will do my master's, then again I'll get a job. So there was like direction I had. But right after I graduated, I felt lost. Like, I don't have a certain way to follow, or no guidance, or what should I do now? Like, like, is there like any psychological concept or any relation to that feeling of being lost, like after like finishing your education?
Well, I think it's just such a natural reaction to have, because it's such a big transition, is what, like, we like to say, transitions are big. And moving from graduation or being in school to now being in the workforce is a big transition. And so that's when you really get to I like to think of it as get to know yourself in the work, you know what I mean? In the work that you do. You know, it's not that sometimes what you do is what fuels you and what is your passion. And sometimes it's something that gets you through the day and pays you enough to do what you want on the outside. And that's okay too. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
really an opportunity for you to decide what you want your work to be, what your work life, how much you want to dedicate to it, and what that looks to you, you know?
Right. Right. So yeah, so there is definitely like what a state of confusion, I would say. Like in my case, it's like where should I go now? What should I do now? How do I take those steps, like climbing that ladder? What ladder that should be? How do you think that confusion would affect us, like on our mental health, maybe, right?
Well, I think, like you said too, like, you know, you're starting to climb that ladder, but what does that ladder mean? Is that the corporate ladder? Is that your career ladder? Is that your experience ladder? You know, how are you developing yourself into the person you're supposed to be or you want to be? You know, and there's multiple versions of you that can do that, right? It's not like there's just one choice that defines your whole life, but you start making decisions and those decisions affect how you live your life and what you want it to be. So when you graduate, there's so many decisions at your door, you know, whether or not you took an internship and now continuing on with that job, or you want to travel the world for a bit, or you want to move to a different city, you know? These are all transitions and decisions that will impact you significantly. So it can be quite intimidating when you graduate to be like, I don't know what I want to do. And yet I still need to make steps now because I need to continue growing and developing into myself, you know? And a lot of times that's through career. We find identity through our career a lot. And that's not a bad thing, but it's just that what do you value and what do you see yourself doing and how much time do you dedicate for that, you know?
Right, like that's totally relatable. The other thing I wanted to get, like very related to what you just said, like finding your identity, like finding how well you're doing, or like coming to self-worth and compassion towards yourself. I want to go into other aspect, like how do you think during this phase of our life does social media, be it like maybe Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn, like affect our self-esteem and our perception? Like other people are doing things, they're posting about it, maybe like my friend got a big job and I'm like, I don't even have an interview. Like what do you think that affects our self-esteem, even though everyone has like, what I understand is from this is that everyone would have like a different path now, right? So how do you think that will affect like our self-esteem or our perception in general?
Well, it's such a push and pull, right? Because in social media, you know, a lot of people want it's a way for people to express themselves, to share pieces of themselves, to share life with their friends and family. But at the same time, it's so hard not to compare yourself with what other people are doing. You know, if one person is traveling all over the world and living their best influencer lifestyle, you're like, of course, like, why aren't I doing that? Or what am I not doing to not get to that point of being able to just, you know, pick up and and fly to wherever I want, post wherever I want, you know? But of course that's not the reality for a lot of people. And it's such a push and pull in that like you want to be yourself and be authentic to yourself, and therefore you're encouraged almost to put blinders on and be like, you know, ignore what everybody else is doing. That's how you figure out what you want to do, is by focusing on yourself. And yet it's so hard with social media where it's like a space to connect and continue to like be in communication with people. and yet you're comparing yourselves to them, especially in this generation, right? We're such a new generation to social media and how that affects our self-esteem and our confidence. So we're almost guinea pigs to that too.
Yeah. Even when I think about it, like I know that based on, for example, when I was job hunting or I was looking for opportunities, like I will be like, everyone is in this, like in recession, everyone is in like same boat, everyone is trying their best, everyone is applying for so many jobs. And still, like when I see things on social media, I'll be like, oh, am I the only one? Am I lagging behind? Right? Or something, like even when I know, but when I see something on social media or something that is not in my control, even then I'll somehow blame myself that this is happening because of something I did, right? Which I don't know how to label it, but I see this as like a cognitive distortion, I would say. And it's just me, but I would say like a lot of students face that, even maybe even worse than me or better than, like that, like it's all subjective. So again, I don't know the technical terms for it, but for example, those distortions or the things which we are not able to control, how should we like reframe them maybe, or work our way through it? Like what should be the steps there? What do you think about that?
Um, so yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with that, especially with social media. And there's no one solution to fix it or to work on it. Something that I do sometimes is when I, for instance, post on like Instagram or TikTok or whatever platform you're using. I post and then I immediately not look at the app, and what I do instead is write down my intention for wanting to post that and share that with people. And me making it very clear for myself personally, it's not about the like count. It's not about if somebody I respect saw it. It's really about expressing myself and about connecting with people and showing my authentic self to people, regardless if people accept that on social media or not. But it can be very hard because, of course, you want friends and whoever to like your post or to acknowledge that they've seen you express yourself and appreciate that, right? That's what I often take from, because I don't have a big follower account on Instagram. And so when I see somebody like my stuff, it's usually somebody I would genuinely say hi to in real life, is how I kind of go about it. But of course, everybody is different in their approach, and some people like a more public profile, and that's great. That's fine, especially if you want to build a bigger social media presence. It's just making sure that, like, when you put that content out, that you're still centered towards your intention for putting that content out, and not making, how many likes you get or how many people see it affect why you put it out there, because in the end, I think you're just trying to connect with people, whether or not you're a public or private profile, whether or not you want attention, you don't want as much, there's a lot of ways to look at it, but as long as you're being authentic to yourself and just checking in with yourself is really important. And social media can provide a good opportunity for that, because before you hit post, just like make sure you're just like, yeah, this is what I want to do, and what do I expect from it, and will I be disappointed if I don't get as much attention as I hoped for from my post, that's going to be okay too.
Right. Yeah, like that is what my perception would be. And yeah, that is like so tough. And to like separate that. And what I understand from that is to like we are associating our self-worth with maybe our very closely to our professional life or like social life or personal life and or achievements, right? For example, if I do a mistake, like I should be more like, oh, I did a mistake, but this mistake does not define me, right? Why do we do that? Like, why do we so closely associate like achievements, our personal life, professional lives, and how can we like untangle that and keep it like separate? Like we made a mistake, but it does not define us. How do we reach that stage in all aspects of life? This is like a very far fetched.
I know.
But what would be your suggestion, Trev?
Well, I wish I had the perfect or the answer for all of that. Unfortunately, I don't. I would just say, like, even from my experience, I had a job, kind of my first adult job that I left after 3 months. And I didn't have a huge presence on LinkedIn. I still don't. I have to work on it. But, the idea of making a post, eh, equivalent to telling people, like, yeah, I got this new job. I'm very excited about it. And then, like, later finding out that, like, it wasn't a good fit for me and I felt like I was struggling and failing at it, made it even more intimidating to put out on social media or make it public knowledge that I left that job, right? Because there was so much shame with it. But in the end, like, you know, not even with social media, although that can be an avenue, it's just talking about your journey and being vulnerable and being open with people about your experience in the workforce, and making the right decisions for yourself, and not worrying as much what people think and worrying about the aftermath of your decisions. Sometimes for how what might other people think about it. You have to do what's best for you and what's true to you, and sometimes that doesn't always follow the perfect LinkedIn profile or Instagram page.
Yeah, no, that's correct. And yeah, like it's a journey, I would say at the end, and it's a long one for sure. But yeah, like coming out from that from social media, again, I know that mental health is a journey. So some quick tips. So what would you say to someone who feels like they're falling behind because they haven't like landed a job yet?
I would say, of course, that can be a challenging situation, but give yourself credit for putting yourself out there and continuing the job search hunt. And sometimes jobs come up that you don't expect. I mean, from personal experience, but just other people I know who have struggled in the job search and expected to land something directly in their field and within their field of study, and having to adapt to the market, to the economy, and changing direction or trajectory if it's necessary. Um, and not in like a harsh way. You still want to do something that, hopefully you enjoy, or at least you can get you through the day or get you through the work. Um, but making sure that even though you had a certain vision in your mind for what's going to happen once you graduate or once you start the job search hunt, to just be open for more possibilities, because sometimes it just depends on what's available.
Right, that's correct. Yeah, there is no like strict like an answer that fits for everyone, right? Like it's just we can try to achieve the best state is what I would say too, right? And again, this does not define.
It isn't, and one job doesn't have to define you. Just if you take one job in the meantime, maybe it means you build up your experience to get the job that you really want or desire, or you use it in the meantime, and then you continue to apply for the jobs that you want. Sometimes a paycheck is what it is, a paycheck, and then you use whatever you have from that to further yourself in what you vision for yourself, what you picture yourself doing.
Right. Yeah, on that note, again, quick tips. Uh, so from this prior discussion, what I can see is that there is somewhat like a fear of making a wrong choice, right? How can we manage that fear that, oh, I'm gonna take this job. Is this correct for me? Or like, do I see myself 10 years? Like, how do I manage that fear or anxiety that I made a choice? I don't have any guidance. This was my own decision, right? Like, what would you say about that wrong choice here?
I know it might be easy for me to say, but I don't think there is a wrong choice because every choice you make helps you grow. Whether or not you accept a job that you did not expect in the beginning or you decide that's not for you, every job can help you grow. Even the job I had that I ended up leaving after 3 months, I grew so much from that. And I wouldn't take away the fact that I took a chance and went for that job, because sometimes you have to try things to figure out what you don't want to do. If you take a job for a year and you don't really know the expectations from it, but you soon learn and you're like, you know what, I don't want to do this forever. That's not a bad thing for you to learn about yourself. Sometimes you have to try things in order to figure out what you want to do.
Mm, right. That's true. Yeah, it's again, it's just try and learn, fail fast. And yeah, I would say that too. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, let's like some things up. I know you have like the questions I'm gonna ask you have tried to answer it in the other questions too, but just to get it in like one place, I would like to ask you what habits or like routines you would recommend, especially for students who are in process of transitioning into work.
I would say try and structure your day, even if you don't have any structure at the moment. If you're out there applying for jobs and you currently don't have one, make sure you're exercising, maybe you're eating well, you're connecting with friends and family, you're not distancing yourself, isolating yourself in your room, being like self-criticizing yourself a lot for perhaps not having work, because not having work is work a lot of the time. Looking for work is a job in itself and you can't discredit that. And you also need to make sure you like give yourself what you need, even your like we talked about earlier, like your identity isn't your job, and you should, if you're in the job search hunt, that can be really difficult, and make sure you're taking care of yourself while you're doing that. Um, the other tip is if you are starting off in the workforce, to again, very similar, make sure you're taking care of yourself, if you're and a lot of times, if you're starting full time, you do have benefits. Take advantage of that. Go to therapy, get the massage, make sure you take your vacation, make sure you value your time off
Boundary.
work, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, that's great advice. And yeah, as you mentioned, go to therapy. Related to that, and this has struggled me a lot too. And I know a lot of friends of mine who struggle with this question too. How do we know it's time to seek professional help versus like going to therapy versus when it's like normal stress, like something which is normal and part of our daily lives? How do we is there like a metric or a parameter or like something we can think about before approaching like professional help?
So a lot of times people seek therapy after a severely traumatic event in their lives or something very significant happening in their lives that they need to talk to someone about. So that can always be the case, but I also think that you can start therapy anytime, you know? I equate therapy a little bit with going to the gym and getting a personal trainer and them teaching you and how to do certain routines or gym exercises and helping you create that routine until eventually you no longer need them, right? So the idea is that you don't have therapy maybe forever, although maybe for some people they do, that's okay too. But the idea is that it's those building blocks and building foundations that you get from therapy in order to navigate situations and emotions you have by yourself eventually, right? So I would recommend therapy whether to anybody, whether or not they're looking for work, whether or not they now have a job, whether or not they just graduated, you know, especially during periods of transitions or difficult times. It's important to talk to someone. But in general, it's just always a good idea to check in with yourself, and therapy provides a good opportunity for that.
Yeah, that's great. And finally, the most important thing, again, you have covered this in so many questions before this. But yeah, it could be like a closing statement, but what do you think is the role of self-compassion in this like in this confusing phase of our life?
It's so important to have self-compassion because in the end, it's you who has to be so comfortable with yourself. And in order to be comfortable with yourself, a lot of times you have to know yourself. And that can be uncomfortable for a lot of people, you know, digging deep and looking back or perhaps acknowledging issues that they have or things they have to work on. But making sure you have a safe space for that, you know, making sure you're able to be vulnerable, not just with a therapist, but with other people too, people you trust. Um, and during periods of transition, it's really important to have your support system. And that can include therapy, that can include family, that can include friends. You know, it's all about who can support you during challenging times. And when you graduate and you're looking for work, that can be a very challenging time for.
So that's great. I think that sums up the theme that we wanted to cover today. And thank you so much, Siobhan, from your time. I'm pretty sure your master's would be a very busy time of your life. And thank you for taking our time to come to our podcast.